Howdy folks, I hope you all had a good weekend, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. And I suppose, well, the biggest gaming news of last week was the release of the Odyssey expansion for Elite. As I'm sure you're all aware, I've been really looking forward to this, having taken part in the alpha. And as launch days go, it wasn't great. I mean, I managed to get it installed and upgrade my version of Elite, but I didn't manage to get much in the way of playtime, not on launch day. I managed to get in and complete the on-foot tutorial, but when I tried to do anything more than that, it just crashed. Combination of launch day server stability issues and, well, they kept taking the server down to apply hotfixes. So, yeah. On day 2, however, I was able to get in without any problems, and I was able to play without any problems. No performance issues, no bugs, everything worked. Turns out I was very much in the minority. It was almost a carbon copy repetition of my experience with Cyberpunk 2077, which, for the most part, performed flawlessly. I didn't encounter any bugs, and I genuinely wondered what all the fuss was about. And oh boy, was there a fuss about the launch of the Odyssey expansion for Elite. I didn't encounter any of the problems that other people were experiencing. And I wasn't even aware of the problems that other people were experiencing. I didn't bother going onto the forums, I didn't bother going onto Twitter. Why would I? Everything worked fine for me. But it was when I was watching Boomfunk MC's attempted live stream of Elite Odyssey on Friday night, when he was trying to get some multi-crew stuff done with pointy-haired Jedi, that I started to become aware that not everything was quite right in Odyssey Land. Multiple crashes back to the menu. He seemed to be spending most of the stream in the options screens trying to, well, make stuff work. And when he did eventually get into the game and joined a squadron with pointy-haired Jedi, the two of them could never seem to get into the same instance at the same time. It just wasn't working. So I counted myself lucky. And then on day 3, I started to run into issues myself. The issues ranged from the game breaking, where I was able to log into the game, but every time I tried to actually, play, the server would be unable to retrieve my commander details and would just dump me back to the main menu. The game would start to hang every time I tried to quit back to desktop, and the only way to actually shut the game down and free up system resources was to do a Control-Alt-Delete and terminate the process. And then I started running into some interesting mission bugs. In order to unlock one of the engineers, I had to complete 10 settlement power-up missions. Usually these are quite straightforward. You're provided a power regulator, you fly to the settlement that needs to be reactivated, find the power plant, get in, insert the power regulator, power on, job done. Occasionally there are complications, scavengers might attack, or the settlement could be damaged and on fire, and then you'd have to go around extinguishing all of the fires in the various different buildings before the mission would complete. This is normally fairly straightforward. Each building has a number of environmental control panels. You simply purge the atmosphere and the fires go out. And that's where I ran into one of the more interesting mission bugs, because these environmental control panels in one mission just disappeared. I'm not saying I couldn't find them, but it was extremely difficult to find them when they kept popping in and out of existence depending on how close to them you were. I realised this was happening when, completely by accident, I got close enough to a wall that was housing one of these panels for the panel to just suddenly pop back into existence. It had been there all the time, it was just invisible until I got close enough. So, in order to complete the mission, you had to purge the atmosphere of the various different buildings that were burning in order to extinguish the fires. And the components that enabled you to purge the atmosphere were basically invisible. So that was fun. And also kind of serious, because if you fail to complete any of these Odyssey ground missions that you accept, you not only lose reputation with the faction that gave you the mission in the first place, but they fine you 100,000 credits. So, yeah. Other people were complaining about terrible performance on PCs that really shouldn't have been suffering from terrible performance, and I, again, didn't really have this problem most of the time. And then when I was playing on Sunday, in certain locations, my frame rate would just absolutely tank for no good reason that I could figure out. So I think it's fairly safe to say that despite the initial massive success of the Odyssey launch, where it ran straight to the top of the Steam sales charts, it has not been entirely without issues. I have been enjoying it though, despite these issues, and there will be future videos coming up detailing my trials and tribulations as I run around like a headless chicken trying to figure out exactly what it is that I need to do in order to unlock the various different new engineers, because of course at the moment there are no guides. You basically have to figure it all out for yourself, and I like that when it works. Speaking of new games, although technically it's not really a new game because it's been in early access for the best part of 2 years, Subnautica Below Zero. Do you remember last week when I was talking about how the hell can people have an average of 32 hours and the most dedicated players have in excess of 90 hours into the game? And as many of you pointed out, they are actually including the whole of the early access playtime in those numbers. So I went to have a look, and sure enough I have 93 hours in Subnautica Below Zero, because it's including all of the time that I spent playing while it was in early access, and while it was a completely different game. I mentioned in last week's episode of Mingles with Jingles that I was playing through Subnautica Below Zero, and to be completely fair, I have been enjoying it, but couldn't help but get the feeling that I was suspiciously close to the end after only a couple of hours of gameplay, and surmised that there was some kind of major plot twist coming around the corner, and there would be many, many more hours of fruitful gameplay awaiting me, and there wasn't. I think 12 hours of gameplay from start to finish, including all of the bits where I'd basically run out of clues and I was just waiting for Alan, my friendly alien, to give me another hint. And yeah, it's done. I've completed Subnautica Below Zero. And I did enjoy it, but there were huge sections that were just completely pointless. I mean, I unlocked the sea truck, and I managed to get all of the depth upgrades for the sea truck. Obviously, I've completed the game now. And with all of the depth upgrades, the sea truck will go down to a depth of 1,000 meters. And then I unlocked the prawn suit, and all of this will be coming in future Subnautica Below Zero videos. And after getting the various different depth upgrades for the prawn suit, I found that the prawn suit could go to a depth of 1,100 meters, so I thought to myself, aha, I know how this works because I've played the original Subnautica. One vehicle, or mode of transport, since the prawn suit isn't really a vehicle, but you get the idea. One mode of transport will take you down to a certain depth, at which point you need another mode of transport that is capable of going deeper, at which point you need another mode of transport that's capable of going even deeper still. Like, for example, the big submarine in the original Subnautica could get you down just about far enough, but any deeper, and you would need to go deeper, and you'd need the prawn suit with all of the depth upgrades for that. I can remember in the original game, for example, you needed kyanite crystals. Don't ask, it's not important what they are, they're just a thing that you needed to make the final depth upgrade for the prawn suit. And the kyanite crystals that I'd found were in an area that I couldn't actually get access to with a big submarine. So I went down in the prawn suit as deep as it would go, and then I had to abandon the prawn suit and swim even deeper by myself in order to grab a couple of kyanite crystals, and then as quickly as I could back to the prawn suit, and then climb my way back up to where my submarine was waiting. And at that point I was able to make the third and final depth upgrade, so woohoo. But you had to plan it out very, very carefully based on the limitations of the various different modes of transport that you had. So I thought, same deal in Below Zero, except nope. I never needed to use the prawn suit. There was nothing in the game that required me to go deeper than 1,000 meters, which was the maximum diving depth of my sea truck anyway. I never needed to use the prawn suit. At all. Ever. I'm not saying it didn't come in useful in certain circumstances, but I never needed to go down to the maximum diving depth, and so I never really needed to use it. Complete waste of time, effort and resources. Now, I'm not saying that I haven't enjoyed playing Subnautica Below Zero. I have. I do still think it's worth it. And if you haven't played the original Subnautica, you're definitely going to enjoy it. But it is nowhere near as good as the original Subnautica, which was a groundbreaking game in so many different ways. Not least of which was the amount of bang for your buck that you got out of it, because I spent weeks, possibly even months, playing the original Subnautica, and I spent about 12 hours playing Below Zero before it was done. So below zero is good, but it's nowhere near as good or as long as it should have been, given the amount of development time that they've put into it and what they had to work with in the original game, which is a far, far superior experience. And while we're on the subject of things in games that were completely underwhelming, I guess it's time we talked about the whole Kong versus Godzilla thing in World of Warships. So Flamu, quite famously, although he's definitely not the only one, got hold of the Godzilla vs Kong package. For those of you who don't know what this is, there's a package, or multiple packages available in World of Warships, where you can get either King Kong or Godzilla, or indeed both of them if you spend enough money, where you can get the legendary monsters King Kong and Godzilla as captains for either the USS North Carolina in the case of King Kong, or the Imperial Japanese Navy Amagi in the case of Godzilla. And if you buy these packages and you have a look at the ships in port with the various different King Kong and Godzilla skins on, they do look pretty damn impressive. Once again, World of Warships art department has absolutely knocked it out of the park. The problems arise when you actually take these ships into battle, because in port the USS North Carolina has King Kong straddling the ship and holding onto the mainmast, and likewise for Godzilla with the Amagi. But that's only in port. When you take them into battle, there is no sign of the monsters, and this is not quite what people were expecting when they bought the bundles. Not only that, the voiceovers of the King Kong and Godzilla commanders is also more than a little underwhelming. They've basically taken the original voice lines for ship captains and just blended them in with some, animal roars and stuff. Not quite what people were expecting. The ship's horns, for example, do sound just like King Kong and Godzilla respectively, but the captain's voice lines kind of really don't. And that's what people were hoping to get, and it isn't what was delivered. Wargaming's excuse for this was, well, you need to be able to understand the messages that your captains are giving in battle. And yeah, that is fairly important, but it's not as if there aren't precedents in World of Warships for having ship captains that either deliver incorrect information or completely unintelligible information. The mighty Jingles himself constantly misidentifies every single class of ship that he sees. And that's exactly what people wanted, and that's exactly what they got. There was also a collaboration with the Japanese anime high school fleet, where you could get the ship's cat as the captain of one of your ships. And you can't understand a word he says, because he's a cat, so he just meows. And that's great. That's exactly what people wanted. It's exactly what they were expecting. And it's exactly what they got. And then, of course, you've got all of the wildly popular anime collaborations with various different prepubescent girls screeching at the top of their lungs in Japanese, which, unless you speak Japanese, and let's face it, most people don't, is also 100% completely unintelligible. So to say that they couldn't deliver proper voice lines for Godzilla and King Kong because nobody would understand what they were saying is, well, it's true, but it's not without precedent. They have done it before. They could have done it this time. I think most people were expecting them to do exactly that, and they didn't. So, underwhelming voice lines, skins on your ships featuring Godzilla and King Kong, which are only actually visible when they're in the port, and are, well, not so much when you actually take them in a battle. It's hardly surprising that people decided that this isn't what we thought we were getting, can I have a refund please? And that's what many people did. Flamu was one of them, and he posted a video on the response that he got from Wargaming, which was not entirely unexpected, but entirely hilarious. Wargaming said that because he'd used the pixels, he couldn't return them. That's right. These pixels have been used. They are unsuitable for return and resale. We don't deal in used pixels here. Really? Those were in fact the exact words that I said to Flamu, words that he used in his video on the subject. Quite aside from the whole just ridiculous nature of that statement, you can't return the used pixels. It does kind of beg the question, what would have happened if people had tried to return their pixels in an unused state? I'd like a refund on my Godzilla and King Kong pack, please. Have you used it? No, no. These are pristine pixels. So what's wrong with it then? I don't know. I haven't used it. You can see how ridiculous this is, right? It's not just me. Well, anyway, there is a happy ending. After a couple of days of backlash over these absolutely absurd statements, Wargaming caved in gracefully and quite rightfully started offering refunds on anybody who wasn't satisfied with what they got when they purchased these Godzilla and King Kong bundles. This should have been the default response right from the start, but hey, better late than never. Actually, this raises another issue that I've been wanting to mention for quite some time, but do you know why games have in-game currencies like doubloons in World of Warships, like gold in World of Tanks, like ARX credits in Elite Dangerous, or like when you go to the Atom store in Fallout 76 and everything in the store is purchasable with atoms, not actual dollars or pounds or, euros or whatever. There's actually a very, very good reason for this. You see, in most countries there are consumer protection laws designed to safeguard you, the consumer, for anything that you have paid real money for, particularly if you've paid for it with a credit or debit card. It's not something that's happened to me very often, but it has happened at least once where something had gone wrong. I'd ordered something online that never got delivered, and I was in communication with the seller for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they would either just ignore my emails or tell me, yeah, we're having delivery problems, don't worry, it'll be there soon. And I gave them way more time than I think anybody else would have before I started asking for refunds. And my emails went unanswered, so I got in touch with my bank because I'd paid on my debit card. The bank were very helpful. Once I'd provided proof that the goods had not been delivered, I'd been in communication with the seller and they were just ignoring me. The bank were very happy to very quickly recover the money and credit it back into my bank account. No problem. That is what can happen if you are not satisfied with or you don't receive something that you've paid real money for. But when you've bought something with an in-game currency, there are no such consumer protections. Your bank can't refund the 10,000 gold that you spent in World of Tanks. It can't refund the 10,000 doubloons that you've spent in World of Warships. Gold and doubloons and ARX credits in Elite and atoms in Fallout 76, these are not currencies that your bank is familiar with. It can refund the money that you spent to buy the gold or buy the doubloons, but only if you do not receive the amount of gold or doubloons specified. If you pay, I don't know how much are doubloons in World of Warships at the moment? Let's take a look at the premium shop and find out. So, at the moment, I could go to the World of Warships premium shop with my debit card and buy 25,000 gold doubloons for the sum of £69.30. Now, provided I actually receive that 25,000 doubloons in my World of Warships account, as far as the bank is concerned, there is no problem with that transaction. I spent the specified amount of money and I received the specified amount of in-game currency. The only circumstances in which I could get the bank involved to recover the funds spent on that transaction would be if I did not receive the 25,000 doubloons that I'd paid for. The doubloons themselves work exactly as advertised. They're an in-game currency. I knew how much I was getting, I knew how much I was paying for them. When it comes to spending the doubloons on in-game items like ships and captains and equipment and consumables and things like that, if I don't feel like I'm getting value for money from the doubloons for whatever in-game items I've bought, that's got nothing to do with the bank. That's entirely between you and Wargaming. The doubloons are working exactly as advertised. They're the only things you've actually paid money for, and so they're the only things that your bank can help you out with. Things that you have bought with the doubloons are between you and the game company. And there are no consumer protections for things that you spent gold, doubloons, ARX, or atoms on. That is entirely between you and the game company. It's not real money anymore. And if, for example, you spent your 25,000 gold doubloons on a premium tier 8 battleship that you actually ended up not liking very much, good luck asking for a refund, because no actual money has changed hands. And that's why all of these games have in-game currencies. because it's far easier to deny a refund for something that you have not actually spent any money on. The one final thing that I wanted to bring up in this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, you may recall in last week's episode I was talking about Twitch's massive hypocrisy when it comes to sexually suggestive content. In particular, all of the fit young ladies trying on various different bikinis in hot tubs and calling it just chatting. I swear I had nothing to do with this, okay? But literally, within days of that episode going out, world famous thought Amaranth had her Twitch channel demonetized. She's entirely free to continue trying on bikinis in hot tubs, but Twitch has now deemed that that sort of thing isn't advertiser friendly. Because it isn't advertiser friendly. Well, depends on the advertiser, of course. And so within a couple of days, Twitch, what's the right word? Expanded on their decision by introducing a new category: pools, hot tubs and beaches, because there may very well be advertisers who wish to place adverts on that kind of content, and at least now it has its own category. Twitch have finally admitted to the massive hypocrisy of calling this kind of content just chatting, and so they now have their own tits and ass category, and that's absolutely fine. That's just a little honesty. That's all I was calling for. And don't worry, all of the amaranths and alinities of this world will be absolutely fine. Even if Twitch hadn't very kindly provided them their very own tits and ass category, they'd have still been fine, because basically all they really use Twitch for anyway is to advertise their Patreon and OnlyFans accounts. So don't worry, don't panic, all of the alinities and amaranths of this world are going to be absolutely fine. It's just that Twitch have finally been a little more honest about the whole thing. And on that bombshell, I think that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've all had a good weekend. I hope you're all going to have a great week. Although, let's face it, the chances are that most of us probably won't. But it's the thought that counts. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.